Hello, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Glad to have you joining us today for the Human SOS show, and appreciate everyone that is going to join us. And be sure and tell us where in the world you're joining from. We like to shout out everyone that participates, and look forward to an hour of what I believe is going to be a real game changer for those that will take the time to use the information we're going to be sharing. So, Anton, you want to open us up?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I'm excited about this one today. It really introduces our three brands that we focus on at Prospective Force, but this presentation is geared at helping you guys make change. There is so much noise out there in the corporate world, in business to customer sector, it doesn't matter, where people are talking about these systems of change and they're proposing these changes. They're not based on science. They're not based on actual behavior change research. So we'll talk about these three brands, but more importantly, at the end, we'll show you guys how to actually apply change, and we'll explain to you the accountability knob and how to set that up to be able to move 10% at a time, but do it with drastic results. But as always, before we get into our main presentation, on the topic of change, we're going to talk about our article, which is going to be best practices in change management. I forgot to change the rest of those things, but go ahead and skip to the next one. And we're going to be talking about best practices in change management. I got this from Prosy.com. I want to make sure I give them credit because this is a really in-depth PDF. You guys can go download it, take a look, see if that makes sense for you. But they identified these 7 change management best practices. By the way, if you guys are just joining, this is Human SOS Show. I forgot to introduce us. We are an HR-based LinkedIn Live, YouTube Live, Facebook Live show geared at helping leaders create humanly sustainable environments. We really believe that we're headed in a really dark place when it comes down to human sustainability within the workplace, and we have to change the way we operate within that ecosystem. So we're a coaching and consulting company that helps people through assessing their environment and then creating change within the 12 principles that we talk about. But anyway, so today we're talking about 7 principles of change management. And go ahead and they're going to break them down one at a time. So we'll start with mobilizing active and visible executive sponsorship. So hit the next slide. I have a slide for each one of them, Kev.
Okay.
So it gives you all the different steps that they're talking about, mobilizing active and visible sponsorship. So first is supporting the change by giving consistent attention to the change and the need for change management, right? A lot of times change management is done without necessarily having the right support, without having all people on board. People rush it too much. And this article really breaks down the steps you need to take to ensure A, that the change happens, B, that change is actually implemented properly, and then success comes out of that change. A lot of times we create change and it doesn't always transfer over into bottom line dollars or whatever it is we're trying to accomplish. So then championing the change by leading and motivating others in the organization, making effective and influential decisions regarding the change, including aligning priorities among other leaders in the organization, right? Involving all the departments, right? Especially if it's a change that involves the entire company, get everybody involved, get the people involved, get your little powwow meetings, brainstorming meetings at all levels of organization to help them plan this change. So when you roll it out, they feel like they were part of the problem or part of the solution, and they're going to want it to win. They're going to want it to succeed. So they're going to be doing it much harder. Maintaining direct communication with the project management and change management teams and remaining accessible during these change, and influencing peers to maintain buy-in and participate in a coalition of sponsorship. So that sponsorship with peers, all your leaders that are your peers and above you, whatever it may be, need to come together and really stand behind this change. What I see a lot of times happen is there is not this visible sponsorship isn't there. Leaders are complaining about change visibly in front of team members. They're blaming the ivory tower or, the C-suite is, oh, they're making us do this. I'm telling you guys, you're going to go through change anyway. So as a leader, you putting down the company and the change you're trying to implement is only hurting you as the leader and how much work you have to do to implement that. So what is your thoughts on mobilizing active and visible sponsorship, Kev?
Yeah, at a minimum, at least communicate clearly as to what's coming, why it's coming, and all. And if possible, the change itself may be dictated and hopefully not down to minutia, so that part of the conversation you can have is, how do we implement this change? What are some ways that we can contribute to it, and so on, again, to have buy-in from the people involved. And one of the things that we have to remind folks is, in order to get the buy-in and everything, remember, these are people, not machines, they're not computers. And so as you implement any kind of change, if you want their buy-in, you've got to think human.
You know, and I often talk about this, you know, quote or whatever we want to call it. It's the focus that we try to create perfect plans. We try to put this amazing change management plan, and sometimes they're not even that as present, but we built this beautiful thing out. It has all the steps, all the dots are, you know, all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, but we forget the buy-in component. And I always say this number: 100% perfect plan with only 50% buy-in from the team is significantly worse than a 50% perfect plan executed 100% by the team. The numbers add up when you do the math, but that's the thing about culture. Culture is not quantifiable. And when you don't have buy-in, you're not going to have good culture. And because of that, all those small little nuances that you can't sometimes explain, you can't put a finger on, and you can't quantify, they're not happening. And for that reason, your perfect plans will disappear without that buy-in. Let's go to the, hold on. Here's a little figure they covered. So very ineffective sponsor to extremely effective sponsor, right? And they're looking at correlation of sponsor effectiveness with meeting objectives, right? So the meeting objectives of this change management. 29% effectiveness with very ineffective sponsor, 73% with effective sponsor. So we're almost tripling the likelihood of that objective being met when we have effective sponsorship, guys. This is why it's important. Let's go to the next one.
Well, and your folks are going to sponsor, positive or negative. It's up to us to help them or to encourage a positive sponsor.
So from there, we're getting step 2 is applying a structured change management approach. I am a huge fan of structure. But to Kevin's point, don't make it so tedious and so like outlined. Every single step is outlined. There's no freedom of expression. There is no, creating your own kind of way of doing things. You got to give people wiggle room to express themselves and work within their strength. But there still should be an established, customizable, scalable, easy to implement across multiple changes, and easy to apply at every phase of the project kind of change management approach. So it doesn't mean that it's always the same structure, but usually you're going to have some similarities across different change objectives as you do as a company, especially when you get good at this, you start following that. But I'm a huge fan of scalable, right? A lot of times people don't think about how is this going to scale out. They didn't test a pilot in a small market. They didn't do the things that are needed to see what is going to happen when we do this on a much, much bigger scale than what we sit here in a boardroom and plan. So make sure that you're understanding when we start to go global and we go really big with this, what is this going to actually look like? And make sure it's easy. Once again, it's not so many steps that people get lost along the way, but more importantly, people have to have confidence in what they're doing. They have to have confidence in this change management approach, and they have to feel confident that they know it. Otherwise, they're going to duck their head down and try to get through the process without actually learning and implementing the proper things.
Yeah, I think about when we talk about structure, it is so critical to have structure without any doubt. And the structure, by the way, should align with our vision, mission, and values. And in terms of scalable not just up, but also down. I think when I look at structure and change and managing that change, is I think about the NIMS, National Incident Management System, and the Incident Command System that has been developed by FEMA. And it is one of the best concepts. And the basic structure is based on about 6 different major categories. And from there are subcomponents to it, but you start with a manageable structure. And by the way, concept, span of control that at the end of the day, any effective leader is not only going to be able to manage 4 to 6 people or 4 to 6 things. And so as we think of structure, like Anton said, don't develop this plan down to minutia, because having done many mission plans, I will tell you that by the time the first effort is started, something has already got to be changed. And if you're operating on a perfection level, you're going to be frustrated, and you will have taken out the opportunity for people to be people as part of the change. Very important concept.
Absolutely. You guys see the graph here, and the reason I like this graph here, a lot of times I hear people say, well, we don't have this perfect process. We are going and we're doing just fine. We're doing okay. This graph shows you can get lucky. This graph shows you that poor methodologies still have, a 7% of respondents having basically said impact of use of methodologies and overall change management effectiveness, saying that 7% still are able to succeed, right? But the difference you can see is that, my bad, 7% can still end up poor, but at the same time, poor methodologies 3% can still succeed. But the problem is that look at the difference of how many more failures are happening because of poor methodologies or none versus how many successes are happening. So, statistics are always going to have outliers. So you can't base and say, we're doing okay. You happen to be an outlier, or that project happened to be an outlier. When you repeat this, chances are things are going to break down if you don't have good change management approach. Let's get into
your comment about, getting a little bit happen. Makes me think of a saying: the enemy, that good is the enemy of excellence. Yeah, because we've been able to get by with it, and it's we tend to say, well, it's good enough. Nah, well, yeah, if you want just good enough results rather than excellent results. So value in having the structure there. Again, if you're with us, please introduce where you're joining us from. We always like to know you're out there and be able to give you a shout out, and hope you'll also be asking questions, comments
and hit the like button so we know who's watching, right? We like to see who's tuning in. We'll give you guys shout outs, whether in comments or likes. But we're just talking about change management today. We'll talk about the 10% principles that we use within Prospective Force to make that shift. But let's get into the third one. We have 7 of these. Third point that they're reinforcing is communicate frequently and openly. So focusing on cadence, consistency, transparency, leveraging multiple communication channels and preferred senders. Ultimately, guys, feedback, rapid, frequent, accurate, and delivered in a way that is resonated and accepted versus feels like you got beat down with a stick. So that's really what that says to me. And I like the word cadence in there. With change management, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of moving pieces. The easier you make for people to know when to find the communication, when to receive it, when to be prepared, how to digest it, the easier it is for them to get through it and move on to the things that are much more important. So having cadence with your communication is important, meaning that certain communication comes out on certain times, certain dates, but also the way that it's structured has to be, a certain way, especially if it's a multi-team communication or a multi-department communication. There's pieces in that communication that certain people may need, certain people may not. Don't make these people read the entire email and feel like they wasted the time, because they're going to stop reading that email eventually. Instead, make sure things are broken down by section so they can go straight to the section that they need, capture the information needed that's relevant to them, and move on. And that's how you're going to ensure that your open rates on your communication are much better. And that's with your internal folks.
Yeah. Welcome, Vasanth. Glad to have you again this week. The one thing that we have to be careful is to have some protocols in the communication, especially regards to email, because one of my pet peeves in communication, I'm all about effective and full communication, but sending a mass email out and somebody starts hitting reply all, and when that starts happening, you're going to lose most of your effectiveness in communication. One simple tip is not for secrecy, but to avoid some of that, is to, whatever your mass group is, blind copy them And then if people need to reply, they can reply and then copy in the few people, maybe if any, they need to. The other thing about communication, especially with change, is know how your people communicate most readily. With electronic capability, it's easier to communicate multiple channels to get information out. For example, I am now working with this organization called IEC. We have a platform that we can send out communication, both SMS or messaging and email at the same time. And if you can do that, you have especially improved your effectiveness in communication.
Absolutely. Coach your people, right? Coach your people. I like your focus on reply all. There's nothing wrong with it. People don't know how to think. Some people feel guilty if they don't reply all, right? They're feeling like they don't care about what people are saying. They feel like they're not part of the team. But if you openly in a meeting explain behind it, and some of your front line may be getting three emails a day. Some of your team may be getting 50 emails a day. You may be getting 200 emails a day, right? So when you start to add in replies all, these numbers can get into thousands. And that, what it does is it desensitizes people from the communication. It makes them become numb to it. And they start to just kind of, whatever, another bogus email, and then they miss important information. So just coach your people. Let's get into the next one. Okay.
One other tip in that regard from an email standpoint, if you are changing topic related to what's going on and you're replying to anyone, change the subject line, either add in the additional topic or change it to that topic, because a lot of people look for what's in the subject line to organize. So I've had situations where we'll do email communication and somebody will change the topic midway through, and when I go back to try to find that communication, it's hard to find because of the subject line. Welcome, Jeremy. Glad to have you back. Haven't seen you in a while there, brother.
What's going on, brother? Let's get into the next one, point number 4 of 7. And we'll kind of speed this up so we get to the other stuff. But engage with frontline employees, guys. This is so key. It's a simple one, but take a look at this, right? So did not allocate resources for reinforcement and sustainment activities, right? Reinforcement and sustainment activities. That's what we're talking about engaging. I'm not talking about just coming in and saying, how are you doing? Like, that's important. That's table stakes, guys. I'm talking about actually engaging them in what they just learned and the processes that you're doing. And when you create allocated resources for reinforcement and sustainment activities, you are nearly doubling the results from 48 to 68%. By doing so. So highlight what's in it for me for those employees, right? That's the motivation factor. Don't assume just because it's good for the company that the team members are on board. It has to be connected to their personal needs, just like, we're human beings. They're human beings. We all need that motivation. Identifying and building a relationship with impacted groups, ensure impacted groups receive the appropriate level of training, and then involving employees, identifying a proposed solution and future state. Guys, this last piece is probably most important. Right? Change management is not a linear thing. It's a circular thing. So if you're missing the feedback in that loop from the people that are constantly doing it, you're really missing the boat. You need to understand what's going on. How are they feeling about implementation? What roadblocks are they hitting? What other things they need information on? Because the reality is, if they're feeling that way, there's other people in the company that are feeling that way, and you need to create additional training and resources for it.
Welcome, Scott. Glad to have you on board. I appreciate you being here. And one of the things that I hear biggest complaints, well, the management leadership comes to us, ask a question, ask our opinion, and then promptly ignores it. Be sure that the communication is set up so that it is a two-way communication. If you don't, you're going to disenchant all your team members, and you're going to lose that sponsorship that you want to have that makes or breaks success.
Yep, absolutely. Let's hit the point 5. Dedicate change management resources, right? So this is talking about the actual physical resources, whether it be funding. It kind of comes down to just having people to staff certain things, a change team or a community of flexible, ambitious, decisive, collaborative individuals, right? So it talks about the differences here. You have your less than sufficient resources and sufficient or more than sufficient resources. Look at the difference between poor and excellent. I mean, 85% to 15% is going to be in the poor, and then they flip flop to excellent. And I'm assuming you guys want the right side, not the left side. So don't cut corners and save money on change management. Like, there's a reason why change management consultants make so much money. There's a reason why should be a costly process, because the things that you're impacting are not just something that's a month, 2 months. Usually, if you're doing change management, these are multiple year impact processes that are going to be really, really expensive if they're done wrong, but could be really, really profitable if they're done right. So allocate plenty of resources.
And that includes resources if it's a major change and maybe a cultural change, is to include in your resources ways to do team building and a regathering of the teams around this change. Let it be a part of what goes on, not just something that's rammed down somebody's throat.
Absolutely. Let's get into 6. Engage and integrate with project management. This one's huge. Make sure that change management and project management are talking. I'm not going to get into all the individual details. That will make sense. But did not integrate change management, project management, 30%, success. And then you're going to have exceeding project objectives, I should say. And then when you did integrate it, 47%. It's interesting. Change management has now become a much more bigger part of strategy. I was talking about to a professor, and similar thing happened with technology. Technology used to be a nice thing, right? Technology used to be like, okay, we have technology that can give us competitive advantage. Now everybody has technology. It's no longer competitive advantage. It's meant to be part of your strategy. So your chief information officers now report directly to CEOs, because they need to feel like they're part of the C-level team, not just reporting to C-level. So they are now implementing strategies to do that. Well, change management is the same thing. That's the next thing that came around. I said, we need to implement that as part of our overall company strategy. But here's the next thing that's coming, guys. People and your people's human operating system, how your people operate, is going to be the next thing. I'm telling you, HR roles, there may be a new role that will be developed. I don't know what it is, but think of it as like a person that oversees the staff, but not just from the emotional and their happy standpoint, from a physical performance standpoint, because we are burning out at a rate way crazier than I ever imagined. It's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse. Just because we're out of this pandemic, stress isn't going away, guys. It's going to compound. So given another couple years, maybe longer, you're going to see stress management or more human performance management be part of company strategy. It's coming.
Well, there is an alternative to this approach of number 6, and that is to suspend all operations, execute change, and then pick operations back up. I'm being facetious, obviously, and a bit sarcastic, because that is not realistic. And just because you can write down the plan of change on paper doesn't mean that it's going to dovetail so mightily into your current operations. So the process has to be planned, but it needs to be fluid so that you can react and respond based on how your people are impacted by it. We can predict on some level, but most organizations currently don't know their people well enough to even have a clue how they're going to react, which goes back to a different root problem, but we'll talk about that on another day.
Well, most companies are not really paying attention to people truly, from the way that we're talking about.
Yeah.
And the ones that are coming from the thought standpoint. Let me explain what I mean by that. You'll hear me say it all the time, and Kev knows this, I preach it. Thoughts make chemicals, chemicals make thoughts. It's a dual prong approach. So when I'm talking about people work on people's mindset, people work on people's, happiness level, how they think about their companies, their net promoter scores, whatever it may be. but they're not working on the chemical side. They're leaving this whole half of the equation completely alone. And that's the half that's actually being hurt more, because that side is never off. A lot of the mind stuff gets turned off when we leave work. We're not worried about work. But our chemical side is constantly under pressure from life and health and other areas. But corporate world is not yet addressing it. I'm telling you, it's right now it's going to be a nice thing to have. Soon it's going to be you can't survive as a company without paying attention to the chemical side of your people. Let's get into 7. Last one. So engage with and support middle managers. So basically, make sure that your team, the people that are directly involved with your frontliners, have the support that they need. And oftentimes, what that looks like to me is that you've taken some things off their plate and you got them help. Because when you're putting in change management practices, they have to learn new things. But it's not just that they have to learn new things. They have to teach those things to other people as well. Then they have to follow up and make sure that they're being done. So time has been added on every single task that they do that has been modified. If you didn't take something off their plate, if you didn't provide them additional help or support, then you're just risking that whatever it is they're doing is either going to be left aside or it's going to be done very incorrectly or just poorly and rushed through. And you don't want that.
Yeah, and depending on how your structure's set up, well, even if it's circular, I suppose that people in the middle become a good conductor of change, or they become a distractor to change. And supporting those folks that are in the middle and making sure that part of your resource allocation is especially for them. If you don't, you're going to always be battling distractions and interference to the change.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well said. Let's get into the next part of the presentation. So 10% principles, guys. Where did this thing come from? I've been in the health industry for about 12 years, and I've seen so many little fads come and so many fads go. And, there's very few things that survive the test of time. You have a few that have stuck around, but I'm telling you, they're going to go away too, because they're all just fads. They're these short-term, high hype, low result kind of things, but they sell people emotionally. They get you to believe in it because they identified a pain point, whether it be in your health, your life, your work, and then they use that pain point to get you to do something. And I get how persuasion works. I get that's important, but unfortunately, it goes away against science. We keep finding these microwave type environments where I want instant results. When it comes down to masterminds that are going to fix all our problems, these perfect formulas for hiring and firing, onboarding, whatever it may be for your health. The bottom line is that's not what science tells us. It's not how life works, and it's not how we work. We have specific behavior change principles that we have to follow that research has done for years and years and years. But it's not this all or nothing mentality, guys. I'm telling you, I had just had a conversation with a friend of ours. Both of us know him, and he's this all or nothing guy. And he's arguing with me about, the approach that I'm trying to tell him, break him away from. He's like, Anton, I've always been that way. And I go, how is this working for you? You're obviously sitting in this session asking for help because you can't stay consistent and committed to your goals. And you're trying to argue with me that this all or nothing approach works. It doesn't, guys. It may work short term. Remember, there's always outliers statistically. There's people that are going to win with all or nothing approach. There's people that are going to fail with all or nothing approach. And same thing with what we present. But when you look at statistical majority, people that take gradual change done with specific focus points and very subtle is going to win every time over this. Let's go really hard for 2 weeks, fall off for a month. It's one step forward, 2 steps back, and it doesn't work. Kev, what are your? I know you like the 10% principles. What are your thoughts on that, just high level?
Well, it's real interesting, Anton, because I like the way of delivery or concept of 10% principles. I have been a firm believer in it for a long time because of what you cited. I know it works, but I like to be able to couch it in the concept of 10%. Most of us would say, yeah, I can generally get my head around 10% of something, especially change. because that's doable. When we start asking for, a passing grade on things, then we start getting nervous. Oh, wow, to pass this, I got to hit 70, 80%. Otherwise, I'm failing. And that's only effective in written testing, and we know how poorly they measure things. So let's consider that we don't need to have 70, 80% so-called success to make effective change, because then we start out defeated from the beginning.
Well, this analogy I say all the time, I'm probably going to say it a million times before it resonates with people truly. If I give you the right thing to do that's specific for you, not anybody else, that is the best tool for your specific root cause problem, 10% of your total output will be 100% of all the other noise stuff that people usually do. The problem is the other noise doesn't allow us to stay consistent with that most important thing over time. And I talk about using tools in this analogy of I give you a board and I give you a screw and I say, screw that screw into the board. With 100% of your might, you may be able to kind of get it in a little bit, right? Then behind my back, I have a flathead screwdriver and I show you that. And you think you've won the lottery because compared to your hand, being able to kind of put pressure on that flathead and kind of jimmy it in there to use a Phillips screw, you can still make progress. And you feel like, oh my God, this is a great tool. But in my back pocket, I have a drill with a Phillips screwdriver attachment that I can just put in, consistently done. And then I can focus my time on other things that allow me to protect this 10% of focus time. That's the thing. We have to protect the rest of our time to give ourselves this 10% to focus on our development. But if all we do, we go with these all or nothing approaches, we don't protect that other time. We fall back on other things, they fall apart, and that ultimately pulls us off our approach. Let's get into the first principle.
Well, comment from Jeremy that I think is valid to share. Targeted focus in sport goes a long way.
Yep.
Appreciate the support there, Jeremy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And key is understanding what the focus is.
And you just said that. There you go. Key is understanding what the focus is, not rushing in. Assess for success, right? I've used this principle since about 10 years ago when I realized I can't out-train, I can't outwork poor internal physiology, meaning that if a person is not right on the inside, whether it be their mind chemicals are off, their physical, hormones are off, nutrition, digestion, whatever it may be, doesn't matter what I do externally, how much I push them with workouts, how much I do things, even a better diet, they will not change. So before diving into it, I learned back then, let me do an assessment. Let me do some blood tests. Yes, guys, I've been using blood tests for over 10 years with my clients to really understand the starting point and then be able to check. With leadership, with coaching, we have questionnaire assessments that can assess and say, here's where you start. And by the way, if stress management is something you're struggling with, go to prospectiveforce.com. You see the thing down there. Take the assessment, 60-question assessment. Will tell you where in the 12 areas you have the most need for improvement. And that's what we're talking about. Find that starting point. So that way we're not going after something that is only a 50% problem for you. Let's go after something that's the biggest problem for you, that's impacting many other problems. And by solving that thing at the root, we impact everything above ground.
And assessing is so critical. And I want to share a leadership principle that I am more convinced of every day, and it has to do with HR and consideration. And assessing and understanding this with each of your folks becomes important. But I will tell you that I'm cautious to say 100%, but I will go so far as to say 98% of the people coming into the workforce today and that are out in the workforce come into your situation with one common problem, and that is they're all wearing a loser on their head. Okay. It's not necessary that you've said it, but they have been labeled that way in their own mind at a minimum, and quite often through cultural norms and things. Assessing where people are in regard to that goes a long way. And by the way, the assessment we offer helps deal with identifying some of those loser places for our folks. But yeah, get to the root. I love it the way you talk about, Anton. If we start trying to deal with all the leaves and everything, even if we go in and unless we, especially some types of plants, unless you pull them up by the roots, even if you cut them off, they'll grow back. I mean, you can cut it off at the base and it will in time start growing back. And so the value of getting to the root is it can impact everything else. And in some cases, with some people, finding the right root and helping them with 10% will actually grow many times over and spread to other areas, especially like the one about those being labeled losers.
Yeah, we're not in isolation, right? And I learned this from a human body. A lot of times we try to create workouts to try to isolate a body part, and we think that that's like the perfect thing. And science actually says we can't isolate. Everything in our body is interconnected. Everything in our body is communicating. So when you address these root things, all the things that are connected become improved. And I love your point on cutting it off. The problem doesn't go away. On the surface, it does. The problem underneath never got resolved, right? And a lot of times, the things above surface are the diagnosed things. Those are what we're aware of. The things below surface is what we're unaware of. And those are the most dangerous things out there. Let's hit the next one. So single behavior focus point. And I talk about this a lot, right? I see this with leadership. Leaders come in and say, okay, I need to improve these behaviors, these many different things. I'm going to do this, this, and this. And I'm like, slow down. Let's sit down and take a look at commonalities of all the different things you're trying to improve. What is that one connection? What is that one single behavior that you think would be at the root of all these things? And let's really laser focus on it. And I was trying to find the other picture, but think about the power of the sun. The sun is really powerful. But if we just sit in here, it doesn't really do a whole lot to us. Yeah, it warms us up in the sun. But I take a magnifying glass and I focus that power into a very single spot. Now I create fire. Now I put so much energy into that one area, I was able to create fire. The same thing happens in your body. The same thing happens in your teams. The same thing happens with individuals. When you have that laser focus on that one thing, you're able to create so much more energy and movement with that thing that it actually ignites other things around them. So don't try to do too many things at once, because I always talk about this. Change one thing, 80 to 85% success rate. Change two things at once, we go to 35%. Change three things or more, less than 5% success rate. Think about how often you're changing and how many times you're trying to change more than one thing at a time. Slow down. Take your time. Instead of going this yo-yo up and down, climb slowly, just a little bit at a time, but consistently climbing.
Yeah. I am as big a proponent of multitasking as anyone. And for those of us that have one of those brains, it's just constantly churning. To try to get to a single focus is a challenge. But in this case, digging down to a single focus item, and then like Anton shared, give it that laser effort, then it becomes remarkable. And the good news is those of us that say, well, I can multitask, well, that's great. Then put your primary priority on this one focus area, but allow yourself room for other things, because life goes on.
And I would say, no, you can't. That's the thing, is like, I can multitask, but you already mentioned it. Potential versus actual, right? Good enough versus what you actually can. So when they say I can multitask, you get by with multitasking, right? Or
right.
whoever's arguing this point. But it doesn't mean you're at your potential with it. So I hear it all the time, guys. I hear it's so much pushback as a coach on this, and this. And once again, how is that working for you? How is you're sitting here, you're listening to this, obviously, or whoever we coach on, it's probably not working, because we wouldn't be having this conversation. So let's wind back a little bit, try it the scientifically proven way, and go from there. Let's do it. Next one. This one, I just thought the picture was funny. Can you practice every day and still have a life? Yes, it was a musician talking about it, but the point is relevant, guys. Minimum commitment, no backing off. This is where we've been kind of soft with things. We've been saying, okay, there is lots of wiggle room, there is lots of options, but there's still within 10% fitter relies a point of discipline. And there's something about streaks. We are a very streaky species. We can create success streaks or we can create failure streaks. And when we get on a positive streak, we are not very likely to break it, or we're much more likely to sustain the activity than if we don't have that streak. Try doing something 10 days in a row and see how much more likely to do for 11, versus having to start from scratch. So that minimum commitment is the 10%, part of the 10% focus, right? Some 10% means identifying the 10% that's going to create the 90% of return, right? That's one side. But the other side is at a bare minimum in your perfect world, you're never going to do less than 10% focus on X, whether it be your personal development, your health, your life, what your work, doesn't matter. And no matter what, every single day you're going to do that. There's going to be days where you can accomplish 100% of your focus. And we're going to explain that in a slide or two here. But on every single day, no less than 10% of your minimum commitment to yourself have to be done. And what this comes from, this idea, there was a research study on weight loss done many, many years ago. And the same translates into all aspects of life. And what they did is they studied thousands of women and men for a year. And they said, okay, they had a group of 100% compliance, people that did everything they were supposed to 100%. They had a group of 50% compliance, people that followed to a 50%, and a group of 10% compliance. So the 100% compliance group, and I'm going to butcher the numbers a little bit because I don't remember exactly, but I'm in the right vicinity. We're looking at around 29 to 26%, or 29 to 26 pounds lost, right? Between men and women, different numbers. The 50% lost low 20s. Right? So they were 9 pounds on average less than the 100% group. But the 10% group still lost 13 pounds, right? Almost half of what the 100% group lost, but they only were consistent 10% of the time. What does that tell us? That consistency is way more important to keep consistent than trying to be perfect 100% of the time. It's not realistic. It's your life. You have other priorities besides yourself. That's why that 100% doesn't work. I've worked with a lot of busy moms and busy professionals. That's where a lot of these concepts are coming from. But if you can commit to that minimum commitment and not waver from that, you will create at least close to half of what you potentially could have with not likely to achieve 100%.
Well, and you're likely to sustain it.
Yep, that's what I'm saying.
That is so key. And there's a principle. When we talk about 10%, Anton, I have to throw this in. There's another place that we see 10% as a recommended approach, and it has to do with minimum commitment, and that is in giving. One of the a time-tested principle is giving 10% of our resources, our wealth, and to others. And that principle has the value of that concept. That principle has been proven in that arena for years. Same idea. Just make that commitment. It's not a point that is so painful that you won't do it or can't sustain it. And that's something you can commit to fully.
Miracles could happen with 10%. Small yet mighty changes can move mountains, guys. And I'm telling you, I wish I could have each one of you try this. Right now, I'm actually going to release a little workout program from Prospective Force, but just something I want to do for myself. But what it does is it basically starts with, on day one, you do two exercises, two sets each. So it means that you do something, you rest a minute, you do something, rest a minute, do that 4 times. That's it. May take you, a total of 8 minutes. By day 30, you're gradually adding just 1 day at a time, 1 set. So then by day 30, you build up to a full hour workout. But at that point, you're doing many, many sets of all of them. You're doing strength exercises, flexibility, other things incorporated, but it's just a gradual add. And you go, this first week is not bad. But the time 30 days of just consistent focus come around, you're like, oh my goodness, I am doing things I never thought was possible. But you're doing it in a way that doesn't make you hate it. You're doing it in a way that's not tedious. But also there may be days where you can't do it all. And you come back to the minimum 10%, those 4 exercises. You can never go less than those 4, because everybody has 8 minutes in their day. Nobody can make an excuse to me and say, I don't have enough time to cover 8 minutes. I'm going to say, take a shorter poop. I don't know. Do something different. Like, I mean, fine. We'll carve out time for you to find 8 minutes in your day if we have to. But the point is, there's no excuse. You stay committed to that 10%. So stand by. If you guys want to comment, I'll make sure to include you and tag you in the post to make sure you guys get access to that. But let's get into the next one.
Let's see. Jeremy's got a comment.
Yep.
Okay. As within applies also in the physical world, and when we assist others, especially with our teammates' mental and or physical issues, can assist in productiveness of the team. Tip as a value add, use the law of contagion and compassion to assist in the solution process.
Yep. Well said. Well said. Let's get the next one. Customized tools, right? Just kind of put the sneaker up there, but the point is they have to be tailored to the uniqueness of each individual. Whether you're doing this for yourself, whether you're doing this as a team, the more customized everything is to who we are as individual, the more we're getting closer to that screwdriver drill, right, that I'm talking about, versus having to use our hand or a flathead screwdriver for a Phillips screw. There's many tools out there. We have to get away with stress management, especially from this concept that, yoga and meditation is an answer for everything. It's not. I'm going to tell you, I'm a yoga and meditation coach, and I'll be the first one to tell you that is not a solution for many people for many reasons. Some, they don't like the spirituality aspect of it. Some just don't like it, period. There's so many other things people can do. But if your team comes in and gets a presentation that this is the answer and they don't like it, guess what? Now half your team is not doing stress management. And that was a waste of their time in the first place. That was a waste of your money investment. And it was a waste of productivity hours that could have been spent on revenue generation. Instead, let's figure out exactly what their needs are by doing a needs assessment, tailoring the education for them, giving them the specific tools that are custom tailored to their individual approach. And let's have them use that drill and get through their problems really fast.
And one of the things as you're customizing, even people that don't fully understand it, if you don't consider the whole person when you look at this, you're going to miss effectiveness of the customization. We're all body, soul, and spirit. Got to consider those elements of the person. Even if, there are some people that are not comfortable with spiritual things, knowing that rather than assuming things becomes important, because that's going to factor in how you approach these customized tools.
Absolutely. Let's hit the next one. So now application. This is the actual application of 10% Fitter. And this requires some coaching, but you can sit down and figure it out yourself. But consistency volume knob, right? This is kind of a thing that adjusts based on how your day is, right? Certain days you wake up and your day is open. You have a lot going on. Whatever your personal development focus, whether it's health, life, work, leadership, doesn't matter. You can apply this principle. On a great day, you have a consistency volume knob turned up to level 8. That means that whatever the thing that you designed you want to do in your personal development, and I'm going to give you guys a bunch of examples here in a second. Whatever's that thing you're trying to do, you are doing it on the most perfect way possible, that level 8. But on the other hand, some days you wake up, your day is jam-packed. You are not feeling well. Your mind's just not there. At a bare minimum, you got to do level 1. So you'll see what that means, but you never not do anything at all, right? I've used this a lot in like sales trainings and stuff like that when I'd work with sales development reps and just working on business development. And we would sit down and we just devise each one of these little numbers would have an action that's relevant to lead generation for the sales rep, right? And then level 8 means they've done everything they're supposed to do. They've even confirmed their appointments. They've done the research on their upcoming appointments. How often do you think they're level 8? Not that often. But level 1 was made sure that they followed up and made all their calls that they needed to make their pipeline moving. That was level 1. At a bare minimum, they always had to do that. And then depending on how they felt, they would feel the rest of it. But you know what was key? They determined these things, not me as their leader. We sat down in a coaching session. We figured out what is their representation of each one of those levels and what does it look like? And then they started to implement. And all we're doing is we're checking in and seeing how they're doing. And numbers change. People started doing way more stuff. And it's just Simple, not that complicated. The process of going through this and understanding makes people feel like I don't have to be perfect all the time, right? That L starts to come off their head, like Kevin's talking about, because they understand it's okay to be at level 1 sometimes, because you're still making progress, you're still moving forward. Thoughts on this in general, Kev?
Yeah, just that you mentioned it. I like the fact that you mentioned, okay, if you decide you're going to do these 4 or 2 exercises, okay, at a minimum, that's your number 1, then it gives you the option that if you wake up and you're not feeling well, make sure that you can still do those 2 things. That becomes your level 1. You can always dial up. And if you dial up, then you may dial back, and that's okay. That's part of the concept of not all or nothing. Even all or nothing, once you establish your 10%, is a part of this, and the option to adjust without feeling as though you failed.
Let's get into examples. I'll give you guys some live examples. A lot of this is from health stuff because I've had this for a while, but I got some social stuff in there as well. So movement, right? We call this movement because we don't like exercise. Exercise is too restrictive. Take a look at the variances of movement, right? Some are just going for a walk. Some are walking your dog. Some going for a hike. None of those are necessarily exercise, right? So as an example, level 1, park further from office to walk more. That's all. That's all level 1 can be for you, to feel like you're consistently making progress. But that feeling of success, guess what? It gets you to do more and more of these. It's a trick, guys. I'm being honest with you. This is actually a trick. It's getting people to stay consistent, but all the time, once you get to level 1, you usually go, I can do level 2 today. You know what? I can actually get to level 5 today. But what happens is when we don't accomplish level 1, we do nothing. So for that reason, that may be just a simple parking further, where level 5 is intensity daily training for a tactical military job, right? This complex workout that is as high level as you can get, and it goes as hard as you possibly can. And they don't have to have 10 levels, guys. This can be simpler. This can be 1, 2, 3. The point is, it depends on the person. We have to sit down and identify how deep do they know, how many variances of different levels that they have to the thing that they're trying to tackle. So approach it this way. I don't know. Kev disappeared. Kev, can you hit the next one? I don't know where he went. Well, he'll be back. I think I'm trying to remember what the next one is. I think it's talk about sleep. So with sleep, what you guys be doing, similar principle, right? Similar thing that you would do. Level 1 may be that you do just some breath work once a day, right? You work on deep breathing, and that's it, anytime in a day. Level 3 may be that you don't expose yourself to white light at night and you put on glasses, right, to distract yourself. Maybe level 7 is for the last 2 hours of bedtime, before bedtime, you don't allow yourself any technology at all. You don't want to overstimulate your brain. Where level 10 is you've done all those things. You've also taken your supplements. You've done meditation, breathing exercises, and all the possible things that you could do, including went to bed and woke up at the same time, right? They're not always going to be consistent that way. But at certain points in your life, you're going to be able to do that. So the next one Kev put up here is nutrition. Similar example, guys. I'm just giving you a bunch of these examples so you can see how they apply. So nutrition level 1, replace one meal with less processed one. That's it, right? So right now, you imagine you're having a horrible diet, and most people are telling you, here's all the different things you got to do. You go for a day, a week, or whatever, you fail, and you make yourself feel awful. You tell yourself, I'm a loser, I'm a failure, I don't like this. You have a negative association with trying to create change in your body when it comes down to nutrition. Now you take this approach and you simply replace one meal per day with less processed one. You instead of eating a McDonald's, you go and you get a salad from your grocery store, something like that. Simple stuff, not complex, something you can do every day. But guess what? Now, every single day, you're feeling like you're progressing closer to than you were before. You're doing better than you were before. And level 10, you're running an organic farm and health spa. All meals are prepped by sports nutritionists. You eat slowly with no distractions, right? Being a little facetious here, but that could be somebody's level 10. Your level 10 may be very different, right? And this is not specific to a group of people. This would be very different if you had 10 people sit down. Different knowledge base, different goals, different lives. This is a very customized approach, but you can do it yourself by just applying these principles.
Well, and Anton, I apologize for stepping away there for a moment. Didn't mean to disappear on you, but one of the things that we've alluded to, but I think it's worth just stating, is remember in all of this that what you're looking at is not moving away from anything. It is moving towards things. Okay. And so the commitment you're making is not to stop doing other things. Your commitment is to do better things. And that's what this is all about. From a mindset standpoint, that is such an essential piece. And I know that speaking to health and nutrition, that is your strong point, and I don't have a lot that I could add in there other than to say thanks for the information.
Yeah, I mean, but you get the point. I mean, you add a lot of stuff all the time because you live this stuff, right? To me, a lot of these things are easy and simple, and to you, it's applying them and learning them as we teach our clients as well. So, no, I always love your perspective on it, and that's what makes our team special, in my opinion. We have people that are in the mix to learning some of the stuff ourselves. We have some people that are experts, and then when we flip flop roles with leadership and things like that, you're the expert, and I'm still learning the ropes. Life, similar concept. Let's get into the next one. I think I might be past this one. Go to the next one. All right. So social, right? And same concept, right? Say you want to be more, improve your relationships, right? Whatever it may be. I think this is the one that focuses on here. Ask a loved one for a hug every single day. How hard is that? It's not. Seconds. But imagine if every single day you made sure that you hugged your loved one and you let them know that they're appreciated. Level 10 is you live and commune with soulmate, right? You're going somewhere, you took a trip, you did all this thing, but then there is also level, different kinds of level. Practicing active listening and complimenting other, making sure that once a day you give a compliment to another human being. The hug one's funny. I did this with a team for a while, and it was awkward for a while. And I forget the stat, but I feel like for a hug to count, I want to say it's like 18 seconds. I don't know. There was some ridiculous stat that we heard. You guys know a bunch of stats are made up. Don't quote me on this one. I'm not 100%. But the thing is, it was a really long time to hug somebody. So the team knew that I was not the biggest hugger, and they challenged me. So, Anton, we want you to do this. We want you to do this. Every single day, we're going to come up and we're going to hug you for 18 seconds, and you have to take it. And it went from them coming after me to then growing to me coming after them to it becoming a norm. And I'm telling you, our relationship significantly improved with that single focus. That was fun, put me out of my comfort zone, but it did wonders for us as a team.
Well, I'll give you a personal example in the social area. I know people watching and see me visible on LinkedIn and doing live streaming and stuff think that this is that I'm an extrovert, and as a result, this is all very comfortable for me. What most people don't understand is when I am left to my own devices and I'm in especially a large social group, or if someone puts a camera in front of me, my tendency is to pull away or to be on the periphery of whatever's going on. And I had a good friend of mine that recognized the struggle that I had in this area. So the positive step forward for me in a physical in-person networking was he learned that to give me an assignment helped, because of my commitment to doing an assignment well, helped me in that situation to also be social. And so there are different ways. Each of us has our own version of a hug that we need to experience. For me, it was using my desire to do things and be a part of a solution to also help me engage socially. That's a personal example. So most times if you see me at a live networking event, quite often I'm going to have some kind of a job assignment so that it forces me to get out and socialize, and I'm more comfortable doing that, which is nice.
So what does this look like in real life, right? An application of what we would do for your team or for you as an individual. What we would do is we take the whole group through an assessment. We'd identify which of the 12 principles are the biggest areas of need for them. From there, we'd subdivide these groups based on the principles that they have and create additional education that is super relevant to them. Once we educated them on what they needed to know around it, then preferably we can sit down in some one-on-one sessions or do this as a group as well if time and finances are, a limiting factor, and basically create these accountability systems for your people that are specific to their needs, right? Now you understand your root cause, you understand the specific thing that you can do to make it better that's best for you. But you also have a process and a system that allows you to stay consistent with small yet mighty changes over time. And that's 10%, right? We have 3 brands. We have 10% Fitter, which is our health brand. We have our 10% Better, which is our life brand. And we have our 10% Impact, which is our work brand. And health is how we are, right? The physical state. Our life is what we are. And our impact is why we are, right? And that's how you make a holistic coaching program work. You take a look at all of those things, you make them work together, and you put together a program for a person that helps them reach their potential.
Well, and the value with our team, Anton, is that just like you noted earlier, your area of expertise is health. Mine is more in the leadership, and because I'm old, I guess life. But we have different team members that bring different components. So as we drill down, we can bring different skill sets and talents and insights to meet the need more custom to the organization, because if you buy plug and play things and do a one size fits all, your effectiveness is generally going to be about 30% of your population that you're after. And I'm not sure how many of us would look at a return on investment like that if we knew that we could have maybe 250% return on investment done well. And that's what we're here to do, and love to have the chance to engage with you or your organization to help you find the power of 10%.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, we're really blessed to have you guys spend time with us. We'll be back next week talking about a new topic related to creating humanly sustainable ecosystems in workplaces.
God bless. Take care. Join us next week. Watch for the topic announcement. 11 o'clock Tuesdays Eastern time. So take care. Have a great week.